This conference will now be recorded.
Sweet. You ready there? Cool. Sean, you ready?
I'm ready, mate.
Okay, Norman, you say action.
Action. Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Wow, back to 2021. This is the first episode. I'm glad to have Sean and Fear from Subside and myself from Naked Insider. And we've got Edward Barker from Cleared Agency. So before we start, we're going to reveal in this video what's the number one thing organizations miss when they employ a new candidate and why that could lead to a potential risk at the later stage. So Sean, welcome back again.
Thank you, mate.
Let's go over what is trust and why is it important when we hire people?
Trust. Such a big word. When I look at trust, I will define it as a firm belief that someone or something is reliable, good, honest, effective, etc. It is a confidence, or it is the confidence in the honesty or the integrity of something or a person. And it's the basic foundation of almost every relationship in life. Now, I'll refer it as the glue of any society. That's what makes a society. Without trust, there is no society. Its presence really cements the relationship by allowing people to live and work together and feel safe and also belong to a group. So, and lack of trust causes fragmentation, conflicts, and even war. When we look at people, for example, a trustworthy person should be honest, genuine, and authentic. And lacking of trust allow potential development of harmful thoughts, actions, even emotional, such as negative attributions or suspicion, jealousy, even aggression. And over time, it can lead to bigger problems. So in the corporate world, for example, it can definitely help to grow the insider risk problem when having the wrong or non-trustworthy people.
Great, Sean. Great, thanks for setting the scene. That's really important. And I wanted to add something, which is, I don't know if you've ever read this book. It's called The Speed of Trust, written by Stephen Covey quite a few years ago. If you haven't had the chance of reading this book, it's very well worth it. Now, the reason I bring it up is he describes trust as an equation of character and competence as the key aspects of trust. So I'm going to bring now Edward Barker, who's the CEO and founder of Cleared Life Agency. Interestingly, you're one of the first, or creator of the first, what do you call it, the civilian suitability clearance. But I look at you as Mr. People Risk Manager. So Edward, why don't you give us a little bit more of who you are? And I'll ask you the first question. What does character and competence mean to you when we talk about trust and when we talk about hiring people?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining, allowing me to be part of this. I've only got the water, so I don't actually have the pub, but we're okay. Hey, listen, yeah, so our background is in national security clearances, and so we've been doing that for 11 years now for the Commonwealth Government. And you're right, we've just created something called the Civilian Suitability Assessment or Clearance, and that's sort of using the frameworks of government and to be able to apply that to corporates that don't need a full or official security clearance, but still want to be able to have a measure of character assessment done in their hiring processes in particular, but throughout their workforce. So, but it's a good question. I love Stephen Covey. I think I was brought up with him when I was like 17, 18, 19.
Okay.
I got his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So yeah,
Yes.
absolutely love him. You're right, and that whole idea of character and competence is so important. And I would probably say that I don't know if he says that. I can't remember. It's been a little while, but it's definitely not one or the other, right? So you can't just have
Correct.
a whole lot of competence with zero character, or the other way around, a whole lot of character, but he's just really bad at his job. So you kind of have to have both. And I would even say, if you have a mathematical equation, that it's not a C plus C, character plus competence, but it will be C multiplied by C. So character or competence times multiplied by character. Because I think it's there's something about that kind of accentuates both of them. You need both, and they amplify each other. So, but it was interesting because there was a Supreme Court judge that had a quote in terms of talking about character, talking about these things. He said, character has a clear intrinsic value. It's inseparable from the idea of that it's better in any walk of life, including serving of others in corporate world, let's say, to act reliably and with virtue, with fidelity, with honesty, responsibility, and appropriately with a clear sense of proper, legitimate purpose. And this is what I found interesting, unaffected by the corruptive and the perverse. And so when I thought of that, I was like, gee, that's a really interesting way to describe character, and not necessarily defining it, but just kind of describing it. I don't know if you read any of Dan Brown's novels, but there was one that he wrote a few years ago now that he actually used the word sincerity or integrity or character for, and went back to where the roots came from, which was a thing called without wax. And it came out of, I think it was like, the stone statues that are in, ancient Greek and all those. They have people that fashion those and put them together. And the idea of without wax meant that some of them, if they chopped off an ear accidentally, they would put wax in its place, which was fine if you tried to sell it on eBay at the time. But if it then started to get really hot, so Middle East is pretty hot as well. You start to melt. And so at 45 degree heat, let's say, this starts to melt. And so that ear or the nose or perhaps a private part, wax just completely removes it. And so the idea there of the word sincerity or integrity came out of this idea of without wax. So it was a whole, it was a one. And you think about mathematics, talking about maths again, but the idea of an integer is a 1 or a 0. It doesn't have a partial. It doesn't have a point, decimal point. It's just a whole. And so when you start thinking of character and start thinking of those types of things, I see character and competence being really, part of the whole person. And it's important for us to be able to look at that in some definitive and more qualitative way than potentially we've done before.
Okay, I just think for the viewers, how do we simplistically define what is character and what is competence? So, and the next question is why do we only look at, when we hire people, just on competence only, predominantly?
Yeah. Sean, I'll take a stab first if you'd like, but there's probably, it's important because staff have access to information and to resources and to people that are valuable to the organization. So they're placed in what we call a position of trust. So they may have access to IP or profits or reputation is really valuable. And so to have any of those reduce because of character or issues like that with wax, it causes problems. So I'll give you an example. So retail industry in Australia lost $9 billion last year alone, and that was just theft. Now, most of that people would go, yeah, that's fine, that's shoplifting, that's someone coming out. But the Australian Retail Association said, no, that's not the case. In some of those areas and some of those sectors inside subsectors, 90% 90% of the what they call shrinkage is actually employee theft. So there's some big issues in terms of trying to figure out. So when people move into a position of trust, character. And if you want a quick definition of character, I think John Maxwell called it who you are when no one's looking. Character counts. Character matters. And so think about the three royal commissions recently. So the sex abuse, religious institutions in a position of trust. You've got bankers in a position of trust, and you've also now got, just a week or two ago, you got the aged care. All three, in their final recommendations, said you need to enhance your screening processes because people in position of trust aren't being checked. So I would say that, yeah, there's challenges there, but that's why it's important, because when no one's looking, what are they doing? Are they doing the right thing?
Correct. So I'm just going to add the notion from this book again. So the way that Stephen Covey refers to it is that basically characters combine of intent and integrity, while the capability and the competence is based on the results. So the skills, the references, the resumes, and so forth. So my next question to you, Edward, is what is the percentage of people faking their resume, for example, or being dishonest when they're actually applying for as a candidate?
Yeah, there's lots of different types of stats out there. I think the last one, Forbes magazine said 84% have a discrepancy or an issue or an anomaly or just an outright lie in their CV. So I mean, you think about it, there's pressure. You want to be put in the best place and positioned well. You want that interview, let's say, and so you're going to potentially put something inflated that may not be true. So yeah, there's issues there. Now, a lot of that can kind of get sifted through before it even gets shortlisted, but yeah, up to 84% have got discrepancy. Yeah.
And Sean, I'm going to
answer that question. Why or how come that situation allow that to happen? During an interview, people like to embellish their CVs, all the references they provide, all the stories they make based on some truth, but they will never talk bad about themselves. We all know the traditional questions of recruiters and future bosses. Tell me one thing bad about yourself, or what others will talk about. So we don't tend to talk bad about ourselves. So what makes that situation easy to lie?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You've got half an hour to present your best, put your best foot forward. You don't want to be stuck talking about other issues that don't put you in a good light. So you may want to talk about it, or you may want to address it, but at that moment in that interview, it's not the right place normally to be able to handle it. So it's tricky for a recruiter or a hiring manager or that person who's doing that interview to really want to, there's probably bigger fish to fry in terms of competence, let's say, to go, let's make sure this person can do what he can say he can do, he can talk the good talk and be able to provide and deliver the results. So yeah, it's a tricky one. You've only got a very, very short amount of time to be able to handle things that could get complicated and could get messy really quickly.
Yeah. So Sean, from your perspective, I was going to ask you the question. So what would happen to an organization as a result of bad hiring?
Look, I think, first of all, if we look at character, I think, or personality, it's a scientific proven of prediction of performance and assessing the candidate's behavioral tendencies in a work environment. And it's allow us to understand their individual future contribution to the organization, as well as the impact on the business culture. And bad hire, I guess it results in loss of productivity, general business risks, bad impact on the population or the culture, and that's a problem if you don't pick the right employee. And if you look at daily life or every day, we look at the dating scene, right? We go and interview future partners. We tend to look at their character when we look at future mates or future partners. At work, from some reason, and by the way, when we look to go to first or second date, we always assess the character. Maybe it's the, of course, there is some chemistry there, etc. But the main factor is character, whether it's a good fit for us as a partner. When we look at the corporate world, from some reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, Edward, they more assess the skills and the competence because they look at how fast this candidate can be productive and can produce money. And sometimes they compromise on the character. First of all, because they don't have the right tools to assess it, and second, maybe I don't know, maybe they're afraid to find things that will push away good performer, but they don't look at the impact on the culture. So we can have very good programmers, very good CFOs or CEOs, but they act or they behave very bad to the employees, and it results in a very non-healthy corporate culture.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I don't know if you have to see anything in the news, but the whole misconduct in the workplace and the sexual issues that are going on right now, there are significant claims and issues that are going on in the workplace. So yeah, it's devastating. The cost of it is devastating. Royal commissions because of incredibly bad decisions by people in position of trust. So you're right, but it's a challenge, and we're happy to talk about the challenges of trying to recruit in a way that kind of elevates that one key component, which is that character. So happy to chat about that.
Yeah. So Edward, what are the challenges when hiring or assessing someone's character?
Yeah. So, I mean, as a hiring manager, and I include myself in that, in our hiring toolbox, if you like, our normal go-to character tool is what we reach for is normally our experience in interviewing people. So maybe we think that we're good at, understanding their body language, to what they've said, what they didn't say, how they said it, all those types of things. And the second tool is our gut, is our intuition, is our instinct. Like we just go, yeah, I've got a good feeling about this guy. I'm sure he doesn't have anything too risky in his background. So the challenge, if you like, or the pushback that I see in character and in assessing character is usually, why go on a fishing exercise for red flags? I know that's mixing metaphors, but why go fishing for when my gut says there's no there there? Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's sort of like, why would I want to waste that time when I could just get this guy in the seat and make it happen? The second challenge is that we found is that character checking process does take time, and the right candidate may not wait around for you to do those checks. So there's a speed element to it. There's a pressure element to it. The other challenge is that legally, you can't ask a lot of the questions about a person's background for fear of discrimination. So you can't ask about certain things, and otherwise you start to fall into that place. And so there are limits. The fourth challenge we hear a lot about is which specific checks should we do? Like does this one need a bankruptcy check or a police check? What happens if they're international? Do we go for an international police check? Social media check, what does that look like? Digital footprint check, what do we do? And so probably the fifth challenge is probably what most people fear the most is, what if a red flag shows up? Now what?
Exactly.
Right? And how red is red, right? There's tolerance levels all the way through. How bad is bad, and does it make them unsuitable for the position? So they're probably the challenges that I can see that are pretty standard, pretty common. There's probably some others as well that others may be able to pick up, but they're probably the ones that I see regularly.
So the question then is that coming from your personal judgment, or is that basically a service that, for example, Clear Life Agency provides?
Yeah, so when it comes to assessing, you go about assessing a person's character, the government uses the term suitable, which is essentially means the same thing as character, but it's called suitable. So the government actually defines character traits. They actually call them suitability indicators. And they're looking for, I call it the HTTMLR, which is honest, trustworthy, tolerant, mature, loyal, and resilient. And so those are the 6, if you'd like, suitability indicators that are getting checked. And it's all enshrined, encoded in what they call the Protective Security Policy Framework. That's out there. Anyone can check on that. So it's about assessing. It's assessed by reviewing a person's background and seeing if there's any potential adverse behaviour. So there's 7 broad categories that we look at as a government vetting agency. There's 21 subcategories under that called concerns that all need to be assessed. And so because it's a people risk assessment, ultimately the question, and when we do our hundreds and literally thousands over the years, recommendations to a delegate for a security clearance, national security clearance, the question we have to ask ourselves is, has the risk reduced to an acceptable level or not? So it's very quite binary, if you'd like. It's a go or it's a no. And so there's thresholds there. There's, we can go a little bit further than that, but generally speaking, that's what we're looking for. Can we assure the government that this person is not a risk, or the risks have reduced to an acceptable level? So that's how we go about assessing a person's character.
So the challenge, go ahead there, Sean.
I just want to ask you, maybe, Edward, you're very focused now on the pre-hire and the right capability to provide organizations to filter the right people based on these criteria. Now, will you recommend organizations not to just to judge the trust before hiring a person, but also continue to judge the trust after they employed? Because we know that people are dynamic and people behavior is dynamic, and people bring with them every day different elements that they have different drivers every day that they bring to work. So the people can change. The person you got married 20 years ago is not the same person today. The person you hired 5 years ago is not that person today. So is it like it's like a driving license? We teach the person how to drive. We do the driving test. Is reliable. We trust them. We give them the driving license, but we always assess their driving skills. And if they fail, we manage to align them back on track. Is this something you recommend organizations to do?
Yeah, for sure. So there's 2 elements to that. I mean, from a national security perspective, so government, if you have been issued a baseline security clearance, which is one of the lower levels, you've got that for 15 years. Right? It's a 15 years. So from a checking, like you've got a license, driver's license there forever, but from a baseline security clearance, it's 15 years, and you are mandatorily requested to self-report any changes in your circumstances. So there's something in catching that, but all the way up to the highest level, the PV level, then there's a lot more rigor going around. Why? Because the risk assessment is much higher. The information that you have at that level is a lot dire, and the grave damage that can be occurred from that. So they're getting more checks more frequently. There's more reviews that happen annually, and those, but still, it's a 7-year to do the whole process again is another 7 years. So yes, so that's PSPF 12. PSPF 12 says, is that person suitable? PSPF 13 says, do they have ongoing suitability? And that's kind of what we're talking about now, where I think from a personnel security, there's elements there that are really important, but it needs to be supplemented. It needs to be looked at with other technology, with other elements as well. But to answer your question, yeah, PSPF 12 is a big deal in terms of getting the person inside. I mean, I'll give you an example. The Victorian Public Service had 60% of their contractors don't even have a police check done on them. So there's 3,000 people that their criminal history has never ever been checked, let alone assessed. And so so a lot of our work in terms of just socializing and popularization of security is just start somewhere, and that would usually be your next hire, your new hire. Make sure that you do something that can kind of help. So I hope that answers your question. But yeah, it's a tricky one, and it doesn't end just because they're now in the front door.
Yeah, well, I think this was going to be another conversation that we were going to have in terms of
Yes.
continuously judging a person's suitability. So just a few more questions there, Edward. So
Sure.
what are the things that we can ask a new candidate, and what are the things that we can't ask, given that we're breaching potential privacy of the person?
Yeah, it's a hard question, really, because some of the stats said that 3 in 5 candidates who actually were asked in the interview about their criminal history denied it,
Yep.
even when they did have
Yes.
a conviction, right?
Yes.
So now in the US, they have a thing, if you typed in ban the box, that's exactly what they're talking about. In their application form, they had a box that said, have you had a conviction? And you had to cross it to say, yes, I have had a criminal history. And so they've said, ban the box, stop that from happening. And to be fair, and we talked about it before, let's say it was a minor issue, that from your perspective, minor issue 20 years ago, the candidate doesn't want to spend 10% of their time, 3 minutes of that interview, kind of explaining it away. It just doesn't, it's not helpful, and surely there should be
Correct.
a better way or another discussion to be able to manage that and be able to discuss those issues. So yeah, I would probably inside that hiring is remain confident in what you've been doing now, but add some rigor, add some assurance that your gut feeling is right, is a right one.
Yes.
When I think it's, again, stats say about 1 in 4 hiring decisions are bad hires. I've hired badly, even though they've had a security clearance. So it's not a foolproof way just to be able to do a gut feel, and so to have some assurances, some measures is going to be helpful. So yeah, that's what I would probably tend towards. Stick with your hiring. Everything is the same except for add some other elements to it where you can provide that suitability layer overlay.
So what are the ways that organizations can increase their quantity, but I'd focus more also on the quality of hiring candidates?
Yeah. So
and it could be also the other way around.
Yep.
So from a candidate, how should they approach it?
Yeah, well, I'll stick with some advice, some really low-hanging fruit to start with, and it costs you nothing as a hiring manager, as an employer, including your job advertisement, that the shortlisted candidates may undergo a security clearance. Undergo a background check. Right, just that alone is going to eliminate the most obvious offenders who go, it's not even worth my time. If they're going to check my background and I know it's pretty dodgy, then I'm not going to even apply for the job. So that's a quality by 20% just on that alone. The second one is a Glassdoor research paper had that if you add a quote unquote good background screening program, you can increase the quality of your workforce by 70%. So drill down to that, but that's amazing. 70%, you can increase the quality by 70% just by adding a good screening program background. So if you're not already doing, call it good, but or not already or doing ID checks or police checks, then perhaps look to your HRIS platform. So some have marketplaces out there that CV Check, for example, or First Advantage, Sterling Risk, Pharmacy ID, all of those guys. So just consider outsourcing to those guys to do that. But also consider, and this is probably where we come in, consider outsourcing the investigation, the interview, and the adjudication, that judgment, that risk assessment process that uses government risk standards. Not just for your red flag candidates, otherwise you kind of have a double standard inconsistency in your workforce. But so that would probably be the other way, is think about just having something fast, quick, but also comprehensive to be able to manage that background.
Great, excellent. So just wrapping things up, what will be the sort of number one takeaway for both of you guys that the viewers can take out of this conversation?
I'll start. I think for any organization, they will profit enormously from hiring people based on their character and not just on their resume. Character is important, and
Correct.
doing that will help to strengthen the company's culture, the bottom line, and also help to reduce risk for the long run. I think, yeah, that's my takeaway. Look at people. Yeah. When we look at people and we talk with people, we need to look at them.
Yeah. No,
good. Great takeaway.
I'm singing from the songs, same song sheet there, because partly because something like this, an employment screening program, fits neatly into other government risk and compliance programs that you may already have. So that yeah, fits really well into that. I would also say that on the flip side of that, the cost of managing a hostile act, so whether it be a data breach or whether it be a violence in the workplace, any one of those, the value, both the qualitative value, so the Privacy Commissioner, if you have a breach, data breach costs, I think was $1.8 million fine. I think it's gone up to more than $2 million. The average cost for a data breach is about $5 million for employees under 100. So it's really that cost of managing the hostile act, or that insider incident.
Yeah.
And the recovery afterwards is huge, and it's significantly higher than the cost of properly screening people in the first place, and then having some sort of program that can continue that process. So I'd just say that the return on investment is a no-brainer.
Of course,
excellent.
A bad person will contaminate all the surroundings. So it's not only the direct damage; it's the collateral damage that can be very harmful.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. Edward, is there a question that we should have asked you but haven't yet?
That's something like one of the questions that we ask in our interviews.
Or do you have any last comments that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is our, we love talking about that. So I'd love to, jump on another pub crawl with you guys, because this is really helpful for us. But we've got lots of resources on our website, cleared, spelled incorrectly, cleared.life. Just click onto blogs. We've got about 100 different articles, depending on who you are and your sector. It may be of interest to you, but overall we can see a significant, not only the Royal Commissions, but critical infrastructure components now are all coming and basically saying we need to do a better uplift in personnel security.
Yes.
So we're seeing that kind of across the board. The Australian standards for employment screening is about to increase as well to include adjudication. So we're seeing that society as a whole is going, we need to look at trust in a better way than we have done before. And so it will come by hook or by crook, if you like, or by legislation or by preemptively going, this is costing me pain, so let's reduce the pain to start with. So
excellent. And what's the best way for people to reach you? Is it clear.life, the website?
Yeah, cleared.life is probably the easiest way. We offer a CL0, which is kind of like our basic assessment, equivalent to a baseline security clearance. All the interview questions and the analysis, we turn that around within a day for you, and it's free for the first one. So if anyone wanted to try that out on their next candidate, or contact us and say, hey, I'd like to do it myself, just to see what it's like, then we're happy to help out as well. So yeah, that's probably the easiest way to get in touch. And Edward at cleared.life and our phone number. But yeah.
We're going to have the information down below the video. Sean, any last comments from you?
Yeah, thank you for a great and insightful session. This session will be recorded. Please don't forget to subscribe, to follow us, and use any comment to ask us questions. We will publish that video on the Cyberside website. We also promote it on the LinkedIn, so you will be able to get it and see it everywhere. And thank you.
And so the next conversation, whether we do it in a fortnight's time, but we're definitely going to have another discussion with you, Edward, about that sort of ongoing suitability Sean called it the sort of the life cycle of the employee. So that will be a great discussion. So that's for me, and that's for the virtual pub. And well, I mean, the virtual pub is somewhat confusing, but it's with the whole idea was basically, we're stuck at COVID. Let's get it together. Let's chat over a glass of beer or something like that, but we might call it something else in due time.
Yeah, most urban
Good,
hours.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks for the
everybody.
invite.
Yes.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Sean. And thank you for those who actually watched, and much appreciated. And see you next time.
Next time.
Thank you.
Mhm.